We all have our favorite legend, and each legend has their own specific quirks that you have to figure out and take advantage of if you want to achieve mastery and have them work more efficiently for your playstyle. So today I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you master your favorite legend. But if you want to improve faster and get more in-depth guides on your favorite legends, make sure to head over to the GameLeap website where we have hundreds of guides to help you improve faster. Guides covering fundamentals, advanced movement techniques, advanced legend tutorials, gameplay breakdowns, legend abilities, legend strategies, and so much more. We spend a lot of time and do our best to give full analytical breakdowns that will actually help you in whatever goal it is you have in the game. So if you actually want to learn faster and become insane at the game, I highly recommend you join the GameLeap family to get instant access to all these in-depth guides by checking out the link in the description below. Now for our very first tip, and probably the very first thing you need to start doing, is to watch other high-level players who main your legend. The reason this is so incredibly important is because you need to have a visual reference of what is achievable with the different abilities. Each and every single player has their own ways of using the abilities offered to them, and over hundreds of hours of use, they are bound to come up with creative ways to use them different to their peers. So seeing other people use them in ways that you may not even realize was possible can help massively in getting more usage out of your abilities in general, but more importantly, using them effectively. This tends to have what I like to call a gate effect. You don't realize what is there until you see what is behind the gate. Once you do, you can take all that information and break it down into different ways for you to piece them together for different results. The more gates you open, the more pieces there are for you to work with, and the more free you become when it comes to how to use your legend. Probably not the best analogy, but I'll be honest, I'm not very good at analogies, clearly. However, something that is really important is to make sure you don't fall into the trap of only watching one player. Some players will lean more into a specific playstyle, and if you only watch that player, well, you have far less pieces to work with in regards to making your own playstyle. For example, some players can make their defensive playstyle so good that it appears as if it's more offensive, but in reality, there are other players who are far more effective with their offensive playstyle, so watching both will open up more gates for you to get creative access to these pieces and help you to get a better understanding of the abilities themselves. So start off by finding one player you really enjoy watching and analyze how they use their abilities, and most importantly, how they set themselves up to do so. Once you have a good understanding of how they use the legend, the way that they do, and you can somewhat emulate that, move on to another player and repeat the process. The key is to take it one player at a time because it's going to be easier to fully apply the concepts this way and helps to achieve mastery within each gate faster, but you can also mix and match more easily as you're going along. You think of it like maintenance. You master all your techniques from Imperial Hal, then you start watching Aceu, practice the things you're learning from Aceu, but you can also still do your maintenance from the things you've learned from Imperial Hal. It's just like exercise. Now for our next tip, it's to put more focus on those abilities. Now, this probably sounds obvious, but what I mean is putting more effort into mastering and getting creative with the actual mechanical side of each ability. For example, on Horizon, you can actually leave the gravity lift and come back into it multiple times over without ever leaving the ground. However, this is a motor skill that is somewhat difficult to do and will require a bit of practice in the firing range before you'll be able to actually implement it into a real game. Or with Wattson, you need to spend a lot of time in the firing range practicing making your desired shapes or blocks with your fences as fast and as accurate as possible. As Octane, you need to learn more advanced strafing techniques to abuse when you are stimmed because of how strong of an effect his stim has on things like tap strafing or chained lurches. As Rampart, learning how to super glide can be really strong because you can quickly pop her tactical then super glide off of it to really catch people off guard. The point is, each legend has their own motor skill based mechanics that you may or may not even realize exist, but that you need to learn. This is why watching other players is so important because it helps you to learn the different possibilities and what motor skills you need to work on. So start spending more time in the firing range to practice the mechanical skills relative to your legend's abilities, and I promise you will be thanking me later. At least I'd hope so. Now for our next tip, and this is a big one, but really try to understand the strengths of your legend and get used to abusing it. For example, as a Wattson main, I see some people talking about why you should be using snipers on her, and no offense intended here, but these players do not understand the strengths of Wattson if you're trying to just run a sniper every single game. She's not a long-range fighter and never will be. That doesn't mean you can't use a sniper, but you are going to be 100 times more effective if you're using weapons that complement her kit. When you use weapons that complement your kit, it has a compounding effect making your legend stronger. With Wattson, it's close quarters weapons like shotguns, SMGs, and if you expect to play at range because you are on Storm Point or something, then assault rifles. And this is coming directly from Lamek, someone that has been really popping off lately and who is considered the best Wattson right now. But in general, your goal with Wattson is to get players into buildings or to get them to play around geometry that is close to you so that you can catch them in your web. The key word there being close to you. For more aggressive legends, you can say the same, using a Sentinel and Octane, which is a legend who excels at close quarters fights, and repositioning in close to mid ranges is just diminishing how easy it is for you to bring more value to the table. If you main Gibby and aren't using a shotgun or wingman for your bubble fighting, you are simply doing it wrong. So really take the time to try getting a better understanding of where your legend excels. I'm not saying you always have to play that way, but understanding this allows you to be fundamentally more effective as a whole no matter how you decide to go about playing the game. Which leads me to my next tip, and that's experiment to find new ways of using your legend. Pretty much takes everything we've talked about so far and puts it together. Opening your eyes to more mechanics, practicing them, and using them a way that fundamentally strengthens your legend's abilities. A way that allows you to push those strengths to unconventional limits to go outside of the box that the legend is generally put in. Taking Wattson again as an example, since I'm a simp, everyone knows she's a defensive legend, but she's extremely good at aggressive pushing in and taking space from enemies with her fences. However, this is only the case when you have geometry to build off of. Fundamentally the same, used unconventionally. Revenant's wall climbing passive actually makes his wall bounces have less velocity, making them generally less effective. But his passive also allows you to reconnect to walls and chain tap strafes and other movement to get an even more powerful effect. Fundamentally the same, used unconventionally. Using Horizon's ultimate on the outside of a building to suck players inside against the wall and get them stuck against the wall protects your ultimate, makes it really unexpected, and can make for insane offensive or defensive plays. Fundamentally the same, used unconventionally. Of course, not all legends have as much wiggle room in regards to being used unconventionally, but it is important that you have a deep understanding of your legend's fundamentals so that you can do so effectively. That is what will allow you to be more creative with how you use your abilities. Now, for our final tip, it's to focus less on abilities. Now, I know you might be thinking that this is exactly the opposite of what I just said, and aren't abilities the whole point of the different legends? You would be correct. However, getting the absolute maximum effectiveness from an ability, unless you have a good handle on your own skills as a player, is going to make it a bit more difficult. Aim, positioning, and movement are extremely important and are all things that intertwine with how you actually use your abilities. But I mostly bring this up because if you one day out of the blue just feel like you aren't playing your legend well, one of the best things you can do is to literally just stop using your abilities, or at least stop focusing on them, and instead just only focus on your own fundamental gameplay, because more than likely, this is where the issue actually is. Usually what people will do will just switch to a different legend, but when they switch to a different legend that they're not used to, they automatically don't use their abilities as much, so they're already more focused on their fundamentals without them actually thinking about it. Sometimes your brain just needs a break from the ability usage, and you just need to go back to the basics to reset. Remember, you don't have to use all these tips at the same time. It's a process and an ebb and flow. Jumping back and forth between all these methods will need to be a constant, because as you improve and learn more, the more data you will need to work off of if you want to improve even further. This has been John A. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.